There are 4 qualities every man needs to be the person they want to be. Let's get into it. 1. Embrace your masculine and feminine traits. All of us have masculine and feminine qualities and traits. Some of it is genetic, and some of it is influence from a parent or society. In order to present a consistent identity in society, we repress these qualities, over-identifying with the masculine or feminine role expected of us. We pay a price for this. We lose valuable dimensions to our character. Our thinking and ways of acting become rigid. Our relationships with the opposite sex suffer as we project onto them our own fantasies and hostility. You have to become aware of the lost masculine and feminine traits and slowly reconnect with them, unleashing creative powers in the process. You will become more fluid in your thinking and bringing out the masculine or feminine undertone to your character. You will fascinate people by being authentically yourself. Do not play the expected gender role, but rather create the one that suits you. Masculinity encompasses a broad range of attributes, behaviors, and roles that society typically associates with men or maleness. These can include qualities like strength, assertiveness, leadership, independence, courage, and stoicism. However, it's essential to understand that masculinity is a socially constructed concept that can vary across cultures and historical contexts. The definition of masculinity has evolved over time, and contemporary discussions often include considerations of gender equality, toxic masculinity, harmful aspects of traditional masculine norms, and the need for more inclusive and diverse expressions of gender identity. It's important to recognize that masculinity, like femininity, is not fixed or uniform, but exists along a spectrum. People of all genders may express masculine traits, and individuals may experience and express masculinity differently based on their personal identities, cultural backgrounds, and social contexts. Femininity encompasses a wide range of characteristics, behaviors, and roles traditionally associated with women or femaleness. These traits can include qualities like nurturing, empathy, compassion, sensitivity, gentleness, and emotional expressiveness. However, it's important to note that femininity, like masculinity, is a socially constructed concept that can vary across cultures and historical periods. Contemporary discussions around femininity often include considerations of gender equality, challenging stereotypes, and promoting diverse and inclusive expressions of gender identity. Femininity is not limited to biological females, and people of all genders may embody feminine traits or express femininity in various ways. It's essential to recognize that femininity, like masculinity, is not a monolithic or fixed concept, but exists along a spectrum. Individuals may experience and express femininity differently based on their personal identities, cultural backgrounds, and social contexts. 2. Make people follow you. The essence of authority is that people willingly follow your lead. They choose to adhere to your words and advice. They want your wisdom. Certainly, at times you may have to use force, rewards and punishments, and inspiring speeches. It is only a matter of degree. The less your need of such devices, the greater your authority. And so you must think of continually striving to engage people's willpower and overcome their natural resistances and ambivalence. That is what the following strategies are designed to do. Put them all into practice. You have to find your leadership style through your particular strengths you possess. Are you a deliverer like Moses or Martin Luther King Jr., a person determined to deliver people from evil and injustice? Are you a founder like Steve Jobs or Henry Ford? These are the ones who establish a new order in politics or business. They generally have a keen sense of trends and a great aversion to the status quo. They are unconventional and independent-minded. Their greatest joy is to tinker and invent something new. Many people naturally rally to the side of founders because they represent some form of progress. Are you a visionary artist like Michael Jackson or the film director Steven Spielberg? These artists learn the conventions in their field and then turn them upside down. They crave some new style and they create it. With their skill, they always find an audience and followers. Are you the truth seeker? People who have no tolerance for lies and politicking. Are you the quiet pragmatist? They want to fix things and have tons of patience. Are you a healer? These people understand what fulfills and bring people together. Are you a teacher? They have a way of getting people to initiate action and learn from their mistakes. Another trait you have to develop is your view on the world. First, you hone your listening skills, absorbing yourself in the words and nonverbal cues of others. You train yourself to read between the lines of what people are saying. You attune yourself to their moods and their needs and sense what they are missing. You do not take people's smiles and approving looks for reality, but rather sense the underlying tension or fascination. Second, you dedicate yourself to earning people's respect. You do not feel entitled to it. Your focus is not on your feelings and what people owe you because of your position and greatness. an inward turn. You earn their respect by respecting their individual needs and by proving that you are working for the greater good. Third, you consider being a leader a tremendous responsibility, the welfare of the group hanging on your every decision. What drives you is not getting attention, but bringing about the best results possible for the most people. You absorb yourself in the work, not your ego. You feel a deep and visceral connection to the group, seeing your fate and theirs as deeply intertwined. If you exude this attitude, people will feel it, and it will open them up to your influence. They will be drawn to you by the simple fact that it is rare to encounter a person so sensitive to people's moods and focus so supremely on results. This will make you stand out from the crowd, and in the end, you will gain far more attention this way than by signaling your desperate need to be popular and liked. Another trait leaders have is vision. As early in life as possible, you train yourself to disconnect from the emotions roiling the group. You force yourself to raise your vision, to imagine the larger picture. You strain to see events in themselves, uncolored by people's partisan opinions. You entertain the perspective of the enemy. You listen to the ideas of outsiders. You open your mind to various possibilities. In this way, you gain a feel for the gestalt, or overall shape of the situation. You game out the possible trends, how things might play out in the future, and in particular, how things could go wrong. You have infinite patience for this exercise. The more deeply you go into it, the more you can acquire the power to discern the future in some form. Once you have your vision, you then slowly work backward to the present, creating a reasonable and flexible way to reach your goal. The more thinking that goes into this process, the more confident you will feel about your plan, and this confidence will infect and convince others. If people doubt your vision, you stay inwardly firm. Time will prove you right. If you fall short of your goals, take this as a sign you have not gone far enough with your thinking. As the leader, you have to know how to set the tone. As the leader, you must be seen working as hard as or even harder than everyone else. You set the highest standards for yourself. You are consistent and accountable. If there are sacrifices that need to be made, you are the first to make them for the good of the group. This sets the proper tone. The members will feel compelled to raise themselves up to your level and gain your approval. They will internalize your values and subtly imitate. You will not have to yell and lecture them to make them work harder. They will want to. Develop your aura as a leader. As the leader, you want to be more mysterious, to establish a presence that fascinates people. The more they think about you, the larger and more authoritative your presence. So for instance, you are generally kind and sensitive, but you show an undertone of harshness, of intolerance towards certain types of behavior. This is the pose of parents who demonstrate their love while indicating limits and boundaries. The child is trapped between affection and a touch of fear, and from that tension comes respect. In general, try to keep your bursts of anger or recriminations as infrequent as possible. Because you are mostly quiet and empathetic, when your anger flares, it really stands out and has the power to make people truly intimidated and contrite. You can mix prudence with an undertone of boldness that you occasionally display. You deliberate long on problems, but once a decision is made, you act with great energy and audacity. Such boldness comes out of nowhere and creates a strong impression. You must learn to balance presence and absence. If you are too present and familiar, always available and visible, you seem too banal. You give people no room to idealize you. But if you are too aloof, people cannot identify with you. In general, it is best to lean slightly more in the direction of absence, so that when you do appear before the group, you generate excitement and drama. If done right, in those moments when you are not available, people will be thinking of you. Today, people have lost this art. They are far too present and familiar, their every move displayed on social media. That might make you relatable, but it also makes you seem just like everyone else, and it is impossible to project authority with such an ordinary presence. Keep in mind that talking too much is a type of overpresence that grates and reveals weakness. Silence is a form of absence and withdrawal that draws attention. It spells self-control and power. When you do talk, it has a greater effect. In a similar fashion, if you commit a mistake, do not over-explain and over-apologize. You make it clear you accept responsibility and are accountable for any failures, and then you move on. Your contrition should be relatively quiet. Your subsequent actions will show you have learned the lesson. Avoid appearing defensive and whiny if attacked. You are above that. Develop this aura early on as a way to enthrall people. Also, as a leader, you want to give and not take. Taking something from people they have assumed they possessed, money, rights, or privileges, time that is their own, creates a basic insecurity and will call into question your authority and all the credit you have amassed. You make the members of the group feel uncertain about the future in a most visceral manner. You stir up doubts about your legitimacy as a leader. What more will you take? Are you abusing the power that you have? Have you been fooling us all along? Even the hint of this will harm your reputation. If sacrifices are necessary, you are the first to make them, and they are not simply symbolic. Try to frame any loss of resources or privileges as temporary, and make it clear how quickly you will restore them. Related to this, you must avoid overpromising to people. In the moment, it might feel good to let them hear of the great things you will do for them. But people generally have an acute memory for promises, and if you fail to deliver, it will stick in their mind, even if you try to blame others or circumstances. If this happens a second time, your authority begins to sharply erode. Not giving what you promised to deliver will feel like something you have taken. Everyone can talk a good game and promise, and so you seem like just anyone else we encounter, and the disappointment can be profound. You want to be flexible as a leader. As you get older, the authority you established can become rigid and stodgy. You become the father figure who starts to seem oppressive by how long he has monopolized power, no matter how deeply people admired him in the past. A new generation inevitably emerges that is immune to your charm, to the aura you have created. They see you as a relic. You also have the tendency, as you get older, to become ever so slightly intolerant and tyrannical, as you cannot help but expect people to follow you. Without being aware, you start to feel entitled, and people sense this. Besides, the public wants newness and fresh faces. The first step in avoiding this danger is to maintain the kind of sensitivity as noting the moods behind people's words, gauging the effect you have on newcomers and young people. Losing that empathy should be your greatest fear, as you will begin to cocoon yourself in your great reputation. The second step is to look for new markets and audiences to appeal to, which will force you to adapt. If possible, expand the reach of your authority without making a fool of yourself by attempting to appeal to a younger crowd that you cannot really understand. Try to alter your style somewhat with the passing years. Such flexibility in those who are in their 50s and beyond will give you a touch of the divine and immortal. Your spirit remains alive and open, and your authority is renewed. 3. Learn how to lower their defenses. Life is harsh and people competitive. We naturally must look after our own interest. We also want to feel that we are independent, doing our own bidding. That is why when others try to persuade or change us, we become defensive and resistant. To give in challenges our need to feel autonomous. That is why to get people to move from their defensive positions, you must always make it seem like what they are doing is of their own free will. Creating a feeling of mutual warmth helps soften people's resistance and makes them want to help. Never attack people for their beliefs or make them feel insecure about their intelligence or goodness. That will only strengthen their defensiveness and make your task impossible. Make them feel that by doing what you want, they are being noble and altruistic, the ultimate lure. The following 5 strategies, distilled from the examples of the greatest influencers in history, are designed to help you focus more deeply on your targets and create the kinds of emotional effects that will help lower people's resistance. It would be wise to put all 5 into practice. The first one is listen to understand. In the normal flow of a conversation, our attention is divided. We hear parts of what other people are saying in order to follow and keep the conversation going. At the same time, we're planning what we'll say next, some exciting story of our own, or we are even daydreaming about something irrelevant. The reason for this is simple. We are more interested in our own thoughts, feelings, and experiences than in those of the other person. If this were not the case, we would find it relatively easy to listen with full attention. The usual prescription is to talk less and listen more, but this is meaningless advice as long as we prefer our own internal monologue. The only solution is to somehow be motivated to reverse this dynamic. Imagine for a moment that you could step inside people's minds, and what an amazing journey that could be. People who seem quiet and dull often have the strangest inner lives for you to explore. Even with bores and fools, you can educate yourself as to the origins and nature of their flaws. Transforming yourself into a deep listener will not only prove more amusing as you open your mind to their mind, but will also provide the most invaluable lessons about human psychology. Once you are motivated to listen, the rest is relatively simple. You cannot make the strategic purpose behind your listening too obvious. The other person has to feel it is a lively exchange, even though in the end they may do 80% of the talking. For this purpose, you must not barrage them with questions that make it feel like a job interview. Instead, pay attention to their nonverbal cues. You will see their eyes light up when certain topics are mentioned. You must guide the conversation in that direction. People will become chatty without realizing it. Almost everyone likes to talk about their childhood, their family, the ins and outs of their work, or some cause that is dear to them. An occasional question or comment plays off something they have said. You are deeply absorbed in what they say, but you must feel and appear relaxed in being so. You convey that you are listening by maintaining relatively consistent eye contact and nodding as they talk. The best way to signal how deeply you are listening is to occasionally say something that mirrors what they have said, but in your own words and filtered through your own experience. In the end, the more they talk, the more they will reveal about their insecurities and unmet desires. Your goal is to make them come away from the encounter feeling better about themselves. You have let them be the star of the show. You have drawn out of them the wittier, more fun-loving side of their personality. They will love you for this and will look forward to the next encounter. As they become increasingly relaxed in your presence, you will have great latitude for planting ideas and influencing their behavior. Another trick is to infect them with a good mood. As social animals, we are extremely susceptible to the moods of other people. This gives us the power to subtly infuse into people the appropriate mood for influencing them. If you are relaxed and anticipating a pleasurable experience, this will communicate itself and have a mirror-like effect on the other person. One of the best attitudes to adapt for this purpose is one of complete indulgence. You do not judge other people. You accept them as they are. Infect people with a warm feeling of rapport through laughter and shared pleasures. Many studies on nonverbal cues have demonstrated the incredible power that a simple touch of people's hands or arms can have in any interaction, making them think positive things about you without their ever being aware of the source of their good opinion. Such gentle taps establish a feeling of visceral rapport as long as you do not maintain eye contact, which will give it too much of a sexual connotation. Keep in mind that your expectations about people are communicated to them non-verbally. By feeling particularly excited when you're meeting someone, you will communicate this to him or her in a powerful way. If there is a person of whom you will eventually ask a favor, try imagining him or her in the best light, generous and caring, if that is possible. Some have claimed to get great results by simply thinking the other person is handsome or good-looking. Another trick is to confirm how they already see themselves. No attempt at influence can ever work if people feel in any way that they are being coerced or manipulated. They must choose to do whatever it is you want them to do, or they must at least experience it as their choice. The more deeply you can create this impression, the greater your chances of success. When giving people gifts or rewards as a possible means of winning them over to your side, it is always best to give smaller gifts or rewards than larger ones. Large gifts make it too apparent that you are trying to buy their loyalty, which will offend people's sense of independence. Some might accept large gifts out of need, but later they will feel resentful or suspicious. Smaller gifts have a better effect. People can tell themselves they deserve such things and are not being bought or bribed. In fact, such smaller rewards spread out over time will bind people to you in a much greater way than anything lavish. When you disagree with another person and impose your contrary opinion, you are implying that you know better, that you have thought things through more rationally. People challenged in this way will then naturally become even more attached to their opinions. You can prevent this by being more neutral, as if this opposing idea is simply something you are entertaining, and it could be wrong. But better still, you can go much further. You see their point of view and agree with it. Winning arguments is rarely worth the effort. With their intelligence flattered, you now have some room to gently alter their opinion, or have lowered their defenses for a request for help. Now, you do this by beginning to disagree with a target about a subject, even with some vehemence, and then slowly come to seeing their point of view, thereby confirming not only their intelligence but also their own powers of influence. They feel ever so slightly superior to you, which is precisely what you want. They will now be doubly vulnerable to a countermove of your own. You can create a similar effect by asking people for advice. The implication is that you respect their wisdom and experience. In our daily thoughts, we constantly comfort ourselves as to the moral nature of our actions. If we are employees of a company, we see ourselves as good team members. If we are bosses, we treat people well, or at least we pay and support them well. We help the right causes. In general, we do not like to see ourselves as selfish and narrowly focused on our own agenda. Just as important, we want others to see us in this light. Look at social media and how people will make a display of supporting the best causes. Few people give to charities anonymously. They want their names loudly advertised. You must never inadvertently cast doubts on this saintly self-opinion. To make positive use of this trait in people, frame what you are asking them to do as part of a larger cause that they can participate in. They are not merely buying clothes, but helping the environment or keeping jobs local. In taking these actions, people can feel better about themselves. Keep it subtle. If you are trying to get recruits for a job, let others spread the message about the cause. Make it appear pro-social and popular. Make people want to join the group instead of having to plead with them. Pay great attention to the words and labels you use. It is better, for instance, to call someone a team member than an employee. If you need a favor from people, do not remind them of what you have done for them in the past, trying to stimulate feelings of gratitude. Gratitude is rare because it tends to remind us of our helplessness, our dependence on others. We like to feel independent. Instead, remind them of the good things they have done for you in the past. This will help confirm their self-opinion. Yes, I am generous. And once reminded, they will want to continue to live up to this image and do yet another good deed. A similar effect can come from suddenly forgiving your enemies and forging a rapprochement. In the emotional turmoil this creates, they will feel obligated to live up to the high opinion you've now shown toward them and will be extra motivated to prove themselves worthy. Next, stay away from their insecurities. Everyone has particular insecurities about their looks, their creative powers, their masculinity, their power status, their uniqueness, their popularity, etc. Your task is to get a bead on these insecurities through the various conversations you draw them into. Once you've identified them, you must first be extra careful not to trigger them. People have grown sensitive antennae for any words or body language that might cast doubt on their physical appearance, or their popularity, or whatever their insecurity may be. Be aware of this and be on guard. Second, the best strategy is to praise and flatter those qualities that people are most insecure about. We all crave this, even if we somehow see through the person who is praising us. That is because we live in a tough world in which we are continually judged, and yesterday's triumph is easily followed by tomorrow's failure. We never really feel secure. If the flattery is done right, we feel that the flatterer likes us, and we tend to like people who like us. Never follow up your praise with a request for help or whatever it is you are after. Your flattery is a setup and requires the passage of some time. Do not appear too ingratiating in the first encounter or two. Better to show even a little coldness, which will give you room to warm up. After a few days, you have grown to like this person, and then a few flattering words aimed at their insecurities will begin to melt their resistance. If possible, get third parties to pass along your compliment, as if they had simply overheard them. Never be too lavish in your praise or use absolutes. You must seem as sincere as possible. It would be best to choose qualities to praise that you actually admire, if at all possible. In any event, what gives people away is the nonverbal cues. Praise along with stiff body language or a fake smile or eyes glancing elsewhere. Try to feel some of the good emotions you are expressing so any exaggeration will seem less obvious. Keep in mind that your target must have a relatively high self-opinion. If it is low, the flattery will not jibe with how they feel about themselves and will ring hollow, whereas for those of high self-opinion, it will seem only natural. Another tactic is to use their resistance and stubbornness. Some people are particularly resistant to any form of influence. They are most often people with deeper levels of insecurity and low self-opinion. This can manifest itself in a rebellious attitude. Such types feel as if it is them against the world. They must assert their will at all costs and resist any kind of change. They will do the opposite of what people suggest. They will seek advice for a particular problem or symptom, only to find dozens of reasons of why the advice given won't work for them. The best thing to do is to play a game of mental judo with them. In judo, you do not counter people's moves with a thrust of your own, but rather encourage their aggressive energy, resistance, in order to make them fall on their own. Use their emotions. The idea is not to counter people's strong emotions, but to move with them and find a way to channel them in a productive direction. Use their language. When you use people's words back at them, it has a hypnotic effect. How can they not follow what you suggest when it is exactly the words they have used? Use their rigidity. When people are rigid in their opposition to something, it stems from deep fear of change and the uncertainty it could bring. They must have everything on their terms and feel in control. You play into their hands if you try with all your advice to encourage change. It gives them something to react against and justifies their rigidity. They become more stubborn. Stop fighting with such people and use the actual nature of their rigid behavior to effect a gentle change that could lead to something greater. On their own, they discover something new, and on their own, they might take this further, all set up by your judo maneuver. 4. Learn to be an object of desire. The key to making this law work for you is to objectify yourself and what you produce. Normally, you are locked in your own thoughts and dreams. You imagine people should love and respect you for who you are. You believe that what you produce should naturally excite people. After all, you have invested a lot of effort and have high hopes for success. But others see none of this. To them, you are just a person among others. And as a person, you inspire either curiosity and excitement or indifference, and even hostility. They project onto you their own fantasies and preconceptions. Learn how to balance absence and presence. You have a presence that people see and interpret. If you are too obvious with this, If people can read you too easily and figure you out, if you show your needs too visibly, then they will unconsciously begin to have a degree of disrespect. Over time, they will lose interest. Your presence must have a touch of coldness to it, as if you feel like you could do without others. This signals to people that you consider yourself worthy of respect, which unconsciously heightens your value in their eyes. It makes people want to chase after you. This touch of coldness is the first form of withdrawal that you must practice. Add to this a bit of blankness and ambiguity as to who you are. Your opinions, values, and tastes are never too obvious to people. This gives them room to read into you what they want. Movie stars are masters of this. They turn their faces and their presence into screens upon which people can project their own fantasies. What you want in general is to create an air of mystery and to attract interpretations. Make rivalries of desire. You can create this effect in several ways. You manage it so that your object is seen or heard everywhere, even encouraging piracy, if necessary, as Chanel did. You don't directly intervene. This will inevitably spark some kind of viral pull. You can speed up this process by feeding rumors or stories about the object through various media. People will begin to talk, and the word of mouth will spread the effect. Even negative comments or controversy will do the trick, sometimes even better than praise. It will give your object a provocative and transgressive edge. Anyway, people are drawn toward the negative. Your silence or lack of overt direction of the message will allow people to run wild with their own stories and interpretations. You can also get important people or tastemakers to talk about it and fan the flames. What you are offering, they say, is new, revolutionary, something not seen or heard of before. You are trafficking in the future, in trends. At a certain point, enough people will feel the pull and will not want to be left out, which will pull in others. The only problem in this game is that in the world today, you have much competition for these viral effects and the public is incredibly fickle. You must be a master not only at setting off these chain reactions, but at renewing them or creating new ones. As an individual, you must make it clear that people desire you, that you have a past, not too much of a past to inspire mistrust, but enough to signal that others have found you desirable. You want to be indirect in that. You want them to hear stories of your past. You want them to literally see the attention you receive from men or women. All of this without your saying a word. Any bragging or explicit signaling of this will neutralize the effect. Use voyeurism. One illicit desire that almost all people share is voyeurism. To peek inside the private lives of others violates strict social taboos on privacy, and yet everyone feels the pull to see what is going on behind people's doors. Theater and film depend upon these voyeuristic desires. They put us inside people's room, and we experience this almost as if we were literally spying on people. You can incorporate this into your work by giving the impression you are revealing secret that should really not be shared. Some will be outraged, but everyone will be curious. These could be secrets about yourself and how you accomplished what you did, or it could be about others, what happens behind the closed doors of powerful people, and the laws that they operate by. Dangle in front of people the prospect of grasping the unattainable or the impossible. Life is full of all kinds of irritating limits and difficulties. To become wealthy or successful requires great effort. We are locked inside our own character and cannot become someone else. We cannot recover our lost youth or the health that went with it. Every day brings us closer to death, the ultimate limit. Your object, however, offers the fantasy of a quick path to wealth and success, of recovering lost youth, of becoming a new person, and even of conquering death itself. People will grasp greedily at such things because they are considered so impossible. By the law of induction, we can imagine all of these shortcuts and fantasies, just as we can imagine a unicorn, which gives us the desire to reach them, and imagining them is almost like experiencing them. Remember, it is not possession, but desire that secretly impels people. To possess something inevitably brings about some disappointment and sparks the desire for something new to pursue. You are preying upon the human need for fantasies and the pleasures of chasing after them. In this sense, your efforts must be continually renewed. Once people get what they want or possess you, your value and their respect for you immediately begin to lower. Keep withdrawing, surprising, and stimulating the chase. As long as you do, you have the power.